Rumour Wang. Hello, I'm Hobby Jackal, and this is Rumour Wang, my semi-regular series charting rumours for Warhammer Fantasy that have a bit of oomph. In this video, aside from being slightly blinded by the sun, I'm going to be discussing why it's highly likely that we're going to be seeing a new dragon for Warhammer Age of Sigmar in 2025, briefly touching upon what's next following Warhammer Day, and ending on something I think I got wrong. Right, firstly, quick apologies. I have no idea what the sun's doing shining on England in October. We're not due to see it again until June 2025, I think, and I don't have a super swish setup, so I can't control this. Right, contrary to the YouTube algorithm's deepest, darkest desires that I string this out for as long as possible, I'm going to start with the new exciting stuff first, out of respect for my regular viewers. Right, so Whitefang backed me up is the rumour monger that dropped this cheeky rumour following the reveals of Skaventide. Did you all enjoy the new Skaven models? Wait until you see the mini Doom Wheel, which of course panned out to wonderful effect at the Warhammer Day reveals. They've now gifted us a new chunky rumour which will have Death Soul like Gravelords and Vampire Counts fans feeling pretty psyched. Do you like Death Rattle? Do you like box sets? You like zombie dragons? Well, back a rumouring we go. Let's start from the top. If you're less familiar with Age of Sigmar's weird and wonderful approach to naming things, Death Rattle are the skeletons. They're not the wet undead, they're the dry ones. We've already theorised on this channel that the Graveguard will be making a comeback at some point, because, well, it's logical. They kept the old, differently proportioned sculpts in the Soulblight range, whilst refreshing the majority. Not to mention we've also seen a rumour engine, which fits the design. Death Rattle arguably also includes the whites, for which we also have a elite commemorative model loitering in the wings called Othar the Half-King. And given the Chaos Sorcerer double punch we've had recently, I wouldn't count out some new whitey goodness. The rumour goes on to suggest that we're going to be getting a new box set, and as touched upon previously when I've been chatting about the gloomspite gitz box that's incoming, these boxes now tend to contain all new miniatures. Which leads us on to the big juicy part of the rumour, the Zombie Dragon. Citadel Miniatures first released the Zombie Dragon back in 1986, sculpted by Tom Mayer, with box art by none other than John Blanche himself. This was followed 8 years later in 1994 by a Zombie Dragon sculpted by Trish Morrison and Gary Morley, which always stuck in my mind for the official cabbagey paint job it received. Now, given we're supposedly getting a box of skeleton-themed stuff for Death based on this rumour, I will draw your attention to the fact that the rider of this particular Zombie Dragon appears to be a Skellebob, or white. 6 years later in 2000, Zacharias the Ever-Living hit tabletop, sculpted again by Trish Morrison, this time alongside Alex Headstrom. And for those of you that follow Trish's work, you will probably suspect that Trish sculpted the dragon in each of these instances. Alongside this Necrotch vampire-style upgrade, 2000 also saw the release of a smaller-scale Warmaster miniature for a zombie dragon, which appeared to have a blood dragon-type vampire atop it. 11 years would then pass before we arrive with the first plastic kit of a zombie dragon, which would also be the last kit we'd have until this potential rumour arrived. Released in 2011, this kit also alternatively builds the Terrorgeist sculpt, which is now more commonly associated with the Flesh Eater Courts, and was sculpted by Alex Headstrom and Martin Footed. Now, miniatures these days don't generally bridge multiple ranges or multiple factions, and they seem to be steering more in this direction. Rest in peace, my partially painted gloomspite Gargant. So given, as I've said, the bat-like Terrorgeist variant of this zombie dragon build fits much more neatly within the Flesh Eater Courts range, especially given the vampire riding on it is now visually associated purely with them, I wouldn't be shocked to see the Terrorgeist actually removed from the Soulblight range if they do get a new plastic zombie dragon model. This also does open up space to potentially have a different rider for the beast, which could be a skeleton or a white, which would be fun because it would open up the option for a full bony skeleton themed army. This all ties back into the slightly nebulous roadmap that we had sight of at the Nova Open, suggesting new Death stuff would be arriving in 2025. As the roadmap is a little unclear, it's unclear how much of 2025 these releases cover, but given that they're going to be trying to cram in updates for all of the armies over the course of a 3-year edition, it seems reasonable to suspect that the Orruks, Gloomspite, and Death are going to be squeezed into, at the maximum, the first 6 months of 2025, leading this channel to predict that we will see these new Death models at the latest by summer 2025, probably just before a new Warcry edition. So Warhammer Day 2024 hit with a splash of gloriously predicted rumours on my part, which I must heavily doff my cap to the wonderful TGA forums, and a hefty dose of just good luck. So to bring you up to speed, this now leaves us with Warhammer Age of Sigmar waiting for a new narrative book in the near future, to be followed by orruk warclans who are getting a new spearhead and, you know, let's face it, probably a new hero model, and the gloomspite gitz who are getting a battle tome spearhead and a new army box and miniature releases, for which this channel predicts we'll see more of Git Mob, given that we've had a rumour Warhammer engine, which ties in directly with the Snarlfang range. I'd be happy to be wrong on this point, however, because the spiders, the squigs, and anything gloomspite are really cool. For Warhammer Underworlds, the mini Doom will arrive just on time to leave us with a couple of rumours for future warbands, including the Chaos Dwarves and a Crone-themed Daughters of Cain. Now, I'm unsure exactly how strong these rumours are, but the same person did also leave us with a cryptic Ra and somebody with a potbelly. So if we start to see some of these turn up, we can actually turn to those and go, yep, okay, this other thing's coming too. As for the Warhammer Day reveals itself, it was great to see a live element again, which included Nick Baton, who's a big fan of Warhammer Underworlds, and it's worth checking out his hobby blog where he's pretty much painted every single one of them. And it's left me unsure how I feel about the second edition news. I have mixed feelings in that I've hoarded and sorted a load of the cards, which I curl up and sleep on like a nerdy dragon, and I always love the artwork, but I can look at this with appreciation that this is probably the right move for Warhammer Underworlds. And it's great that the community suddenly, at one point in time, has competitive working rules for every single warband released for Warhammer Underworlds since it first launched, which, whilst they've all existed and could technically be played, hasn't been true previously. Not to mention that the rules are going to be released for free. Now, I went to what it's like to play them without a warband deck, which is an interesting change. And I suppose it's just worth reiterating that you don't need to get rid of your boards and cards. You can still play the old version, you can jump back, and that's not taken away. Plus, 20 warbands are getting a re-release. They're great models. So in my previous rumour video here, I talked about a compelling rumour from Whitefang. What about Death as a protagonist in 4th? So I got excited and assumed that Nagash might reappear, trying to make some kind of alliance to fight off all the rats gnawing at him, or that we might see a new Death faction, or that we might see a new part of a Death faction that was working against the conventional, evil, sterile, undead Nagashi stuff. Kind of using Be'lakor as an example, where Be'lakor sits in the Slaves to Darkness book alongside Archaon, but it's actively plotting against him, the rascal. Well, thanks to comments on this channel and discussion on Reddit, people saying Mordor, I think I might have been wrong. So Mordor is the spiritual successor to the god Mor in Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, the Empire and the countries below it worshipped a pantheon of gods, which included Sigmar as the god king, but also Mor, for example, who was the god of death and the enemy to the undead, so would protect the dead. Which is why the old Warhammer graveyard scenery was called the Garden of Mor, which was then released for Age of Sigmar and Warcry. The new Stormcast from the Ruination Chamber, who are arguably leading the latest edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and arguably the protagonists, happen to be closely associated with this god of death. They're all about Mordor and ravens, and therefore this rumour from Whitefang could just be chalked up to that. Death being a protagonist, Mordor being heavily involved, Mordor being a good god of death. Right, that's it for me. Cheers for watching. Do feel free to hit the jackal face if you'd like to subscribe. And down here, you'll get some more videos on other stuff. Thanks again. Have a good day.